let's get things rolling by going through the export process for exporting a timeline from Media Composer to After Effects. Now, what's important to keep in mind is that everything that I show you in this lesson is absolutely free. Everything's going to be included inside of Media Composer and After Effects for you to do this workflow. I also want to point out that this technique works exactly the same whether you're on a Mac or on a PC. Now, what we're going to do inside of Media Composer is set up an export preset so that if we want to come back to it again and again to export different timelines, we'll have access to it at the click of a button. Let's right-click on the timeline window and navigate down to Export. Once the Export Settings window appears, we're going to want to get in and create our preset. I'm going to navigate down to the Options. I'm just going to bring the Export Settings window up just so that it's a little bit more centered in the window, and let's get our export ready. Now, to export our timeline, we're not going to actually export any physical pieces of media. What we're going to do is export an AAF that's going to link to the media currently on our hard drive, so this way we're not exporting more clips unnecessarily. So let's switch our Export As option from QuickTime Reference to AAF. What I'm also going to do is make sure that the Use Marks option is selected, as well as the Use Selected Tracks option. Now, in most cases, what I suggest is don't be getting in and exporting video and audio. Export just video only. If you need audio to be exported as well, just take a 2-channel stereo wave file and export that from Media Composer to bring it to After Effects as your reference. It's unnecessary to bring in multi-track audio because, to be honest, things can just get really confusing and really bogged down very quickly. With my Use Marks and Use Selected Tracks options selected, I'm going to come down and select Include All Video Data Tracks in Sequence. Now, what's also important to keep in mind is that with the media that I have in my timeline right now, it's all transcoded or consolidated, meaning that it's actually physical Avid media that's stored on my hard drive. So keep that in mind when working through this process. All I'm going to do now is simply come down and say Save As, and we're going to call this export preset Pro Import for After Effects. I'm now going to say OK. I'm going to come down and say Save, and you'll now see that we have that as our export setting. You'll also now notice that the export type is an AAF file. All I'm going to do is simply save that file, and you'll notice that in a matter of seconds, the timeline has been exported. Alright, so let's now get into After Effects and see how we're going to bring this AAF file in with our media. Let's now Command or Alt and Tab into Adobe After Effects, and we'll navigate to File. We'll come down to Import, but we're not going to select Import File as you might think that we would. We're going to skip over that and navigate down to Pro Import After Effects. Now, before I actually import the AAF, I do want to draw your attention to one of the settings. I'm just going to select Modify Settings, and it's right here, Avid Media. With the way that I have Pro Import set up right now, it's going to connect After Effects directly to the Avid Media files located in my Avid Media Files folder. However, there might be situations where you might need to go back to a clip, maybe a client might need to see it for a reference, and you want to just get access to that clip, but not necessarily have to go back into Media Composer, launching it, exporting, and all of that. What you do have the ability to do is to create QuickTime reference movies of that Avid Media that After Effects will then reference, which means that you now have everything contained outside of Media Composer, and the best part with using QuickTime reference movies is that they're relatively tiny considering we don't have any audio with them. But for the purposes of what we're doing right now, I'm just going to leave it as connect After Effects directly to Avid Media. If you happen to have fields in your footage, for example, if you're working in 1080i, you could get in and separate the fields up here in the footage interpretation window. I don't, so I'm just going to leave that set to none. I'm going to come down to OK. I'm going to come to the desktop. I'm going to select AE301 AAF and say Open. And in a matter of seconds, what I now have is that timeline exactly the way that I had it in Media Composer, including the dissolves that I had put in there, now ready to get in and do some compositing work with them. Okay, let's see how this technique is similar inside of Final Cut Pro 10.